Karachi. Okay, amazing.
I'm usually not in Karachi, but for a couple of days I'm in Karachi. I'm usually in Balochistan side. I
Okay,
am where the
okay.
border is, the new port that's upcoming, the port.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I know nothing about the kind of ecosystem and infrastructure in Pakistan for just internet marketing in general. So it'd be quite interesting to pick your brains as well. Many of the following that I built on Quora were from basically South Asia, and I know it blew then more of a few people's minds when they discovered I actually had an English accent, and everyone assumed I was from somewhere in South Asia. So,
Okay, guys, if you haven't noticed, we're on air. We're live on air, but don't get scared. Okay, I can see we get more viewers who just came. Okay, let me introduce. We haven't started yet. It's just heating up. Okay, we have our guest star, the Deepak Shukla from London, and he is or he was, we don't know. We will find out very soon. That the champion of Quora. Deepak, what was the last count? How many views did you have?
at the time that I received my permanent ban from Quora, I was on 15.5 or 6 million views. I was at my height, which is mm,
15 million views.
15,
Well,
15, 15 and a half, and I was doing around 2 million views a week. I was
two,
on
yeah, two
Quora.
millions, 2 millions view a week. It's enormous amount. Believe me, I had 3.5 million all together. So I can. We have another guest, but for some reason he's got kind of well problem with the camera and everything. Hopefully Sage will get to us. We can hear and see him. Oh, okay. So okay, guys, go on. We still everybody who just joined us. We haven't started the presentation really yet. We have our guests ready and our star speaker ready, but we will wait for 5-7 minutes to get all the people, most of the people who are late. Okay, you were talking about something. Okay, let's. I'll just introduce a guest. Okay, we have Brian Blunt. Brian, I will ask you the main question later. But Brian is another star on the Quora. Well, not as big as Shukla in terms of views, but by the age of Shukla, definitely. By the age of Deepak, he will definitely beat him in any direction. Definitely. Uh,
Absolutely.
uh, Brian Blunt from Kansas. We have another guest who's been with us many times. Probably recognize Riz from Pakistan, and Riz is he is a master of a question, so he knows how to ask questions.
A
Yeah.
troublemaker.
Oh.
Troublemaker. I like that. Superb.
Well, yeah, it depends. For me, he's never a troublemaker. He's make something unusual, so show became unusual, and then some twist. Okay, so hopefully we'll have more people. Let's little chat about, yeah, I don't know, about something,
Yeah.
and we'll.
So, Brian, I have a question then. Of course, what is your favorite kind of marketing or just social media channel anyway? Because of your age, I find it fascinating that you're doing so well on Quora.
Well, I never went to Quora usually to market as much. I've always wanted to share knowledge. At my age, it's knowledge sharing and trying to learn as much as I can. That's just always been like a dream of mine. And so Quora really appealed to me because it had the way that I could learn. Even when I started out, I was just reading things and reading it from great writers on there who had a ton of different knowledge to share and was learning a lot. So not even marketing for me per se, but just learning through Quora has made it probably one of the most valuable sites to me personally. Um, I've started using Facebook recently with becoming a top writer, and if you don't know, Quora has a couple different top writer groups that you can join once you become a top writer, and they discuss different product things. So I got it mainly for that, but I still don't use Facebook a lot. I don't use Twitter. I don't use Instagram. I don't use Snapchat.
Oh wow.
So Facebook's kind of, or Quora's kind of my area where I can
Right.
go out and meet different people.
Are you really, Brian? Are you really from Earth because you're not using the top social that people are really obsessed with? You're saying no, I'm not using all these things.
Am I going to find you on Snapchat tomorrow?
Well, I will tell you something. Rizwan, how old Brian do you think? Rizwan, what's your guess?
I think Brian probably be right on like what he's talking, because what is he talking about right now? Now people is like 15, 16, 17, or 18.
Yeah, good. He's 14. He's 14.
People that they do not like.
Yeah, he's 14 and he's been doing Quora since 11, and Quora has no kids section. Yeah, and so okay.
I need to wait. I need to check the Quora privacy. That can they allow any person to register below the age of 13? Or
no, they don't.
If he has done that, this means yes.
They don't, and we will talk about.
If he has done that, this means he
knows us how to do that. He will.
I know I did it wrong.
No.
Forum moderators talked to me about it in November of last year.
So this means he. So this was Brian. This means that you did something first illegally, and now you're calling it out that I've done something legally. Wow, that's wrong.
Illegally, no. Against Quora rules,
illegal.
yes.
It's against.
Not illegal.
Okay. I tell you something. If you read the privacy policy, it says if your age is not 13 years of age, whatever action you do would count it be illegal. It does not say that it's okay to do because you're not 13. So this means a wrong is a wrong call. A right is a right call. That's why they make privacy policy.
Okay, I have a suggestion. So we waited, I think, enough. So everyone who wanted to be with us, hopefully already. Oh, yeah. Okay, we got. Okay, okay. We have one more guest. He eventually managed all his technical problems. Sage Michael. Yeah. I'm really sorry, Sage. I thought it's Michael Sage and tried to find you, Michael Sage. Couldn't find. I found a lot of them. None of them were you. Sage Michael. And Sage Michael, when he asked if he wanted to join, said, "Oh yeah, I'm small and bigger." I said, "Well, maybe you're small today. One day you will be bigger than anybody else." And I tried to check on him, and he already published it. How many books did you publish?
I've actually published a few books, so you're right. I have a TV show that I host in America, so you're right. But on Quora, you know, you've got a teenager crushing me.
Is it only me? But sounds is not good. Anyone can hear?
It's breaking up a lot.
Yeah, your sound is not good, so we can see him. So you can say yes, no, but your sounds okay. Okay, guys, we have another guest, Sage Michael. He published several books. I could not hear what he said, but believe me, if you want to really check on him on a landing page, just click on his profile. You find all these books in Amazon. Okay,
Sage,
guys.
The simple you need to do is just disable the HD. If you go on the network part, you need to disable the HD.
Yeah, you can write it in the chat, explaining it in the chat, but we're gonna go with our presentation, and let's have Deepak Shukla from London. Okay, Deepak, how you gonna do it? Yeah, it's all yours. It's all yours, but you can ask questions, anything. It's free.
Okay.
Do whatever.
Amazing. Well, Anton, listen, thank you first of all for inviting me to come onto your show. I've been blown away, I guess, ultimately, from the kind of response I received on Quora broadly. I mean, I didn't really appreciate the magnitude of how fast I was growing until I one day did a cursory Quora search for about 20 minutes. At the time, I was getting 2 million views a week, and I then discovered, on the basis of that 20-minute search, that I'd not seen anyone who was kind of posting the number of views. And yeah, I've been kind of blown away without really appreciating that. Apparently, that's at the time it's quite important. So it seems. So I guess the first thing I'll briefly tell everybody about the thing that I always find interesting, kind of when I meet somebody who's done something that's in some way perhaps out of the ordinary. I'm 29. I'm from London. I've got a kind of British Indian background, and my kind of journey to date, so to speak, is that as you might have seen on the landing page, is that as I kind of self-titled myself a tinkerer, I've wandered around doing lots of different things over the last, well, I would say normally 15 years of my life, but now that we've got obviously Brian on with us, I need to extend that even further still. So I can hear someone's audio really loudly. I don't know if it's mine or whose it is, but Rizwan, it's yours. No, but hey, listen, obviously just turn it back on anytime you want to interrupt, and anybody interrupt me anytime they want. Yeah, no, I did the whole college thing, and then I've just experimented doing lots of different things with social media just to try and understand how it worked. Quora was probably the first time that I came onto a site with the intention to just kind of help people. I was to help people. That started my journey. Started in. I mean, I had a Quora account for a few years, and I used it much in the same way as Brian did. I was just like, oh, cool. This is much better than Yahoo Forums, or looking at a kind of #1 blog page search for the 7 steps for ranking on Google. You get very much kind of perfunctory advice that's not that different from there'll be 10 blog articles that fundamentally post the same thing. And Quora for me was the first time where I would ask a question, or someone would ask a question. I don't believe, in fact, I've asked about less than 5 questions total ever, I think, on my time on Quora, but I'd love getting lost in it and asking people, or reading people's answers. What is it that what is it that I don't get Snapchat? Can you please explain what's behind it? And you'd get like a Snapchat founder, or you'd get someone who's pretty damn astute answering a question. So I began my journey in November in terms of answering questions. I was doing some stuff on Udemy. I've got like 5 courses, I think 5 courses in, kind of a few thousand students, and I was like, I for the last couple of years, I've kind of been a careers consultant whilst I've done a lot of traveling. Anyone who isn't aware of what I've done, I basically have just spent the last few years moving countries. I just got back from Latvia, I think I was in this morning. I was having a laugh with Sage. I think we spoke on phone, and people were like, "Dude, where even is Riga?" Which is where I went for a bachelor party. And it's funny, I talk about these things, and Brian's here, and I'm like, damn, maybe it's me that's the 15-year-old out of all of us, in terms of kind of how I've lived my last several years. And this is the interesting thing that relates to why I think, when I look at it kind of reflectively, that I've perhaps had some of the success I have had in terms of how I approached questions and my outlook. I've spent, ultimately, the landing page, as for anyone who's read it, focuses upon me as terms of what I've tried, maybe with LinkedIn, or I've got like an Instagram following. I've got like 7,000 followers on Instagram. I was trying to post on Instagram, or I've done a little bit of stuff on Facebook. However, to be honest with you, when I look back, I've spent the last 10 years living in 9 different countries. I'm on a little bit of a military journey, and that, I think, ultimately, in terms of when people consider what is great content is irreverent content for me. Great content is looking at the same thing from a very alternate angle, or providing a fresh perspective. So, one of the things, for example, that I did on Quora that I believe is counterintuitive to any advice that I've ever read when starting out on a journey. You know, Google started with the search engine, or you know, Facebook started with the simple perhaps Facebook chat, and now they change your algorithm to incorporate news, or you know, name your company and the product, whether it's been Apple and the Mac. If you notice my profile, you'll see I'll answer questions on anything that I feel that I have an interesting perspective or I've had an experience on. So in the 4 months that I was ultimately actually active on a daily basis on Quora, I think I posted 1,150 answers. I was averaging about 10 to 12 answers per day, I think, which will also come to, of course, because that is prolific. That is perhaps the same amount of content that people post in the course of a year sometimes. You know, there's lots of other Quorans that we know of, as well as in this conversation live now, that won't perhaps has posted that many. However, what I found is that the guy that also is trying to launch a company that's going to make him $5,000 a month on the side might also be the same guy who's struggling dating this woman that he really likes, and it might also be the
What?
Hey guys, I think my connection was lost, but I'm back. I think can everyone hear me before Okay, all right. Before I continue, so I think the same guy also might be interested in saying, hey, you know, I want to reduce my body fat, or I want to look good when I go to the beach, and it's what I consider to be that's worked for how I've approached it. And I think what's important today is that when you look at anyone who's successful or a company that's successful, people no longer follow or equally follow individuals as much as they follow companies. You know, I'm interested in who Brian is as much as, you know, Brian's information as to, you know, why he's a 14-year-old who isn't interested in Snapchat particularly. You know, they're both of interest. So that, I think, has been perhaps quite helpful. So in that time, I began by writing answers in relation to careers. And I think that what was a tipping point for me was when there were questions that were being posted about Google salaries. What is the Google starting salary? You know, what is the Google starting salary for 2016? So I guess from an SEO perspective, people would consider this to be perhaps the low-hanging fruit. So it's an answer that doesn't require a huge amount of research. You just, because, you know, I don't know that offhand. It'd be strange for anybody to know offhand what is the Google starting salary for a Silicon Valley engineer in 2016. So I would just jump onto Glassdoor, or jump onto you know, whatever the equivalents are for Glassdoor. I'd then, in that case, Google Glassdoor equivalents and look at Salary Finder or something, and then I'd look quickly to see how other people, because there might be at that time 3-4 answers posted. I'd look to see how people structured their answers, and I would just make sure that, hey, I believe in today's age, and certainly people will see it in my questions. A popular thing, for example, on Medium, which is obviously a blogging platform, is that you see the 1, 3, 4 minute reads or whatever it might be. None of my answers are more than 2-minute reads maximum. I don't think. They're generally very, very quick to read. It's the kind of stuff that as you're getting onto the metro, or as you're even walking over to your car with your car keys in your hand, you could probably scroll and get through 75 to 80% of my answer, and then be like, okay, cool, I got it. And that's a reflection of how I consume information, and how I believe the wider media consumes information today. Give me the left angle, make it quirky, make it irreverent. So I then, in that particular instance, look at how people had structured their answers, and I thought, okay, people seem to write long form. I wrote short form. People tended to write and intersperse perhaps an image that they hadn't expanded and zoomed to make the salary figures clear, or they hadn't kind of highlighted. I thought, okay, what can I do that can demonstrate the answer that's understood within 5 seconds? I was like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. I know the answer. This is a Google starting salary. I provide an interesting reference point. Oh, but you might also like to know the starting salary at Twitter, at LinkedIn, as well as at a couple of other companies. And that answer got into the Quora digest about 4 or 5 times in a row, over a space of 10 days, and I remember it being on Christmas Day that it got shared with 1.5 million people, or between 1 to 2 million people in the Quora Digest. And that was the point at which my Quora journey, I think, truly accelerated, because then I was like, oh wow, I can no longer ignore kind of the elephant in the room. I was like, okay, this is interesting. And as I began to get comments, you know, Quora's really interesting because they've gamified the whole process. You know, it's no coincidence that it's a former Facebook founders. The whole idea of Quora is that you come back on and you register a dopamine hit in your brain every time as a writer we get a view and or a comment, and it inspires and incites you to want to write more. And at that point, I began then experimenting with the fact that there'd been a key change in that I have enough of perhaps my own following now that people are interested in Deepak Shukla, and not just people Deepak Shukla's own advice, Deepak Shukla's advice about careers. So then I began answering questions about anything I thought was interesting, anything. And you'll see that I think I became not a top writer. I wasn't on the platform long enough to become a top writer, but I became a most viewed writer in 140 plus subjects, and there was around 80% of those subjects that I'd had personal experience in, which would be perhaps, you know, the traveling, or I talk about relationships, I talk about my personal experiences of things that happen. I started talking about tattoos, you know, there's just some of the interests that I have from a personal perspective. I talk about fitness. I talked about anything that I found interesting, that I thought I have something to say here that isn't the you know, another example of it might be people talk about how can I get really fit? I want to run a marathon. And you know, people begin answering questions in very technical, complex, and detail-heavy ways. But when it's day one for anybody, I'm like, dude, you just need to walk out of your door 7 days in a row, because it's about consistency, which is what I began doing with Quora. It's not about, in the beginning, quality. It's about just consistently putting yourself out there. You know, Woody Allen talks about 80% of life is just about showing up. And I think that most people fall off the Quora or whatever the equivalent bandwagon is because they stop. At some point, they kind of stop. And this was, I found, what worked for me in terms of the short lengths of my answers, as well as talking about things from a point of experience. So when we go on to the idea of about, you know, relationships, I'd say, well, this is my experience of being in Amsterdam and going out with this Dutch lady called Natasha, and this is what happened. And I talk very personally. I talk about specifically things that happened. I talk about my grandmother committing suicide. I talk about, okay, you know, one of the most underrated countries in my view is Malta, not because I read it in a book, because I actually went and lived there for 2 months, and this is what happened. And I found that people began to identify with all of that. And as a consequence, because of course this is about web promo and building and metrics, I then understood that, well, people are interested in me. How can I leverage this appropriately to begin building my own reputation from outside of Quora? And that then became, and then it became a case of building in the calls to actions at the bottom of some of my answers, to also looking at having simple landing pages. I think probably everyone in this webinar that's here with me, as well as others, are familiar with calls to action, familiar with things like lead pages, familiar with things that relate to lead generation. But the key that I think was different ultimately is that shortness. I am all about brevity. I'm probably speaking now and have posted more words audibly than I've ever written on any one answer in Quora. Brevity, as well as coming from a place of experience. I'll talk to you about fitness, not because I'm an NCB personal trainer, it's because I've run 20 marathons. Like I've actually like done it. And then what you discover is the guy that is the corporate executive that's interested in making a career change from Google to Twitter. You know what? He's also 10 kilograms overweight and he'd like to go out and run more. This is what you discover about one person having multiple interests. And that, I think, was one of the key things when I look at the sea of people or writers that are on Quora. Was one thing that I was doing that was consistently different from everybody else. People said to me, in terms of, you know, some of the critical feedback or the negative feedback, I was like, why are you talking about relationships as well as talking about careers? And I'm like, well, why not? Because George from Utah, who is trying to grow his career, also just got dumped last week, and it's part of human nature that once you entrust someone or believe that you think someone has something important to say, you may well come and ask them for other advice, and they only think to ask if you first provide the information on a platform like Quora. Otherwise, they just think that the lady that writes for Career Cups, for example, she occasionally writes, I forget her name actually, Cracking the Coding Interview. She's quite popular on Quora. She's, yeah, Brian's nodding his head.
Yeah, Gail Lackman McDowell, I think.
Perfect. Gail Lackman McDowell. So she's an amazing example of someone who's really astute in terms of cracking the code and anything that relates to that. That's where she's very well respected. She writes the occasional answer about also being a married woman with children, but part of me thinks that a lot of your audience are probably married women or probably in serious relationships with children. I would equally be interested in your advice as to that area. And that was what led me, I think, ultimately to posting the 2 million views a week, to growing to a stage where I was getting 100, you know, I've never spent $1 on marketing, but I was doing around 180 plus opt-ins per day, month one of the 4 months that I began using Quora, when I first actually thought, let me try and see if I could create a PDF of information that people might be interested in purchasing. You know, my first month, it wasn't much, it was like 50 to 70 pounds. The second month was 330 pounds. The third month looked like it was going to be in excess of 500. And I wasn't doing anything different from posting those 10 answers a day, 10 to 12, which took me approximately 90 minutes to 2 hours a day of my time. I'd wake up, I'd sit in bed before I had my cornflakes or my Frosties or my cereal. I'd write my answers. I wrote just about things that I was genuinely interested in and things that I wouldn't need to do any external research for. Why? Because I think that anything I needed to do external research for meant that I didn't know the answer inherently enough to be able to provide anything of value. If I had to go to, you know, provide an example of anchor text, and I don't write about SEO, then I'd feel that, well, I can't answer this answer confidently enough. So everything came from a point of experience. And that was my Quora kind of journey up to kind of its zenith. And of course, everyone's probably very interested in the ban and, you know, what happened there, etc. And no doubt you guys have got questions and contributions. But in terms of what's happened with me and my overall, to summarize, recommendations, if you have something of note to say there in more than one area, then do say it. People follow, I think, individuals much more than they follow companies, because they trust Brian Blood, who's, you know, the 14-year-old from Kansas City, much more than Brian Blood, the SEO guy, for example. It might be because you get that sense of, okay, cool, this kid, I could go play ball in the park with this guy, as well as get perhaps SEO advice, and that's what people care about, I think. And I think that that's what I perhaps reflected with how I was communicating. The second thing is, I think everyone is semi kind of ADHD today. I think very, you know, one of the things Anton said to me, I'm looking at the time now, it's 2:28 British Standard Time, you know, Greenwich Mean Time here in London, and he was like, dude, I would recommend 25 to 30 minutes. If it's going to be 45, you have to be showing people how to make $1 million for nothing, because most people are just going to give up. And that exactly typifies how I think people should communicate information, because we have that filter. Just like when you're trying to talk to a hot woman in a bar, or you're approaching a hot woman in a bar, you've got that 7, if it's the case of the 7-second resume, or the 30 seconds if you can kind of corner her off when she's amongst her friends to impress her. Otherwise, it's going to be an uphill struggle from there, because she's already thinking this guy's kind of retarded, or she's found all her reasons to say no. So keep it short. It's, for me, so important. And that underlines the fact that how do you then become prolific? But if you keep it short, you can still spend your 2 hours in a day, that I did, but instead of writing 1 or 2 answers, you're writing 10 answers, which leads me to the final thing, which we talk about Pareto's law 20% of your answers or 20% of what you do will provide 80% of your revenue, your income, your metrics. Ultimately, it's not like every 1,150 answers I had were all hits. Of course they weren't, but how was I able? Go, Anton.
But Quora, as far as I know, algorithm Quora really hates short answer. I mean, well, short, very short. Very often, if sometimes you just the answer is short. They're asking for I don't know what, how many people lives in Australia. Just stupid. But and you said yeah, that many. And algorithm robot bot of course just doesn't allow you to do that, and you have to put some stupid extra to do that only because the algorithm is not perfect. So you try when you say make it shorter, you don't mean short. You don't mean like one lane.
It's a good point, and what I'd say to that question is it's a good one, and I think that Quora has oftentimes perhaps got it wrong when they've fallen foul of the kind of machine response to human approaches. However, what I'd say with that is that for me would fail that that's not an irreverent answer. You're posting the same answer that 15 people are going to post. So for me, what I'd say, how would I answer that question, which would only take me 45 seconds more? I would say that Australia has 6 million people, but did you also know that Australia has 1.4 more kangaroos than it does people? Do you also know that there are jungle as well as desert as well as X in Australia? That's what would perhaps be my answer, and that I think would do better perhaps than the other answers. So you're right that they can't be too short, but if you combine that in terms of how can I say something that's different that also matches up to the, it needs to be at least 150 or 200 words or whatever it might be. I mean, the irony is ultimately I got banned from Quora, and here I am giving advice about how to write answers on Quora. So I know it's a little bit counterintuitive, but that would be very briefly my answer. Write the population figure. Also write some other interesting population figures about Quora, about Australia, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to attract attention for people who are not particularly very experienced with Quora. The Quora algorithm doesn't allow you to straight short answer.
Yeah.
It really push you to do something more. And if you mention kangaroo, they might get it as a joke answer. A joke answer, and they might ban you as well. Okay, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Deepak, I just got one question. You've done not so much on Quora, okay? Let's bring it back, right? Did somebody approach you and on Quora, as per your saying, but you're okay with us, so we would like to give you a job. We would like to offer you a job that come and help us.
Oh, okay.
Are you to this?
So just to clarify, are you asking whether I was ever asked on Quora for if they would approach me to work?
No.
Was that the question?
No.
Sorry.
You were asked by any third person. For example, if you're doing something on Quora.
No, I didn't.
A third person. No. Did somebody come up and would say, okay, fine, you're so good, you're doing wonderful with questions and answers. You would, or with the answers, we have seen you and be a part of our company and help us in regards to all the relationship questionings or answerings that you've been doing here?
No, I was never approached. I've been approached to write content for people many times. I've ultimately always refused because if you look at my answers, the problem with my answers is that they're very, very far from generic. They're all that relate to exactly specific things that I've done. So I do feel that I'd lose a lot of my kind of, not legitimacy, but my irreverence and perhaps my originality if I was then unable, if I was to write as a pseudonym, as George Proctor of X, who was writing. I'd have to invent huge backstories, and I never really approached Quora in that way. I was like, okay, you're asking about, I think my girlfriend dumped me. What do you suggest about this situation that's just happened? And I'd write, well, I got dumped 3 times. This is how I dealt with it, and here's how I suggest that you should. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I can actually answer that question. Our company did approach Deepak for doing just that. We approached him to pay him to do videos, to pay him to do articles, to pay him to do. Now, I don't know. Can you guys hear my microphone okay now? Okay, good. I've got a couple of books out. I've got some TV shows. I'm an editor-in-chief somewhere. We actually did approach Deepak for that, for just exactly what you're saying, because he knows how to get reach. He knows how to get a lot of people, which is why he was banned. They didn't want it to be the Deepak Shukla show. They wanted it to be the Quora show, which is probably why they banned him, because he had too much success. But yeah, we did approach him, and yes, just as he said, he turned us down, which is terrible because we think he'd be awesome at it.
Yeah. So thank you, Sage.
Well, he can rethink it again now and say, yeah, I'll do it. Well, maybe.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that that really highlights an interesting point about this. It seems probably an appropriate. I'll give people what happened in the moments that led up to the bans, as far as my knowledge dictates, and kind of why obviously I'm not a part of Quora anymore. I've probably also posted in 4 months more policy violations than anybody else. What have been the policy violations? Quora at one point stopped allowing images as text. So I had historically maybe 30 plus. I've written 1,100 answers in 4 months. Proportionally, I'm going to have more violations than someone else who's just written 50 answers. So I had about 50 answers that had images as text. All of those in one day. You see your Quora news feed. It was all just Deepak, you've committed this policy violation. Deepak, you've committed this policy violation. I then, as per each violation came in, changed all of the images as text. So that was one of the examples of what I had a policy violation for. Then once I got 2 one-week policy violations for deleting comments that related to personal attacks on my character rather than attacks on the actual answer. So they'd write, Deepak, you're such a fool, which really wasn't a useful comment in terms of criticizing the answer I'd written. So at the beginning of my Quora journey, I'd just be like, right, I'll delete that because it's just a useless comment in my view. So go on, Brian, were you going to say something, buddy?
You got banned for that, or blocked at least, edit blocked for that?
Because, yeah, I got.
From what I've seen, like, I know Mark Bodnick just left Quora, in case any people didn't know, but he was always a champion of, with blocking and banning and different things. He's like, whatever you need to do on your content, that's your thing. So it seemed like Quora was in favor of you just getting rid of, if you wanted to not even accept comments, they were fine with that because it was your content. So I'm really surprised that just because you deleted comments that they decided to block you, because with a lot of top writers, they've told us, if you don't like a comment, it doesn't matter what it is, just go ahead and delete it, or you can not even accept comments if you go into your settings.
No, absolutely. That's been my experience of it. What you've said in terms of, I've had zero dialogue with Quora on any personal basis ever, aside from being asked, I think, twice to be in like Inc.com for careers advice, and then one of them said, hey, we're going to put you in here, and I was like, awesome, and kind of that was that. But beyond that, then I think ultimately I know that I created a Quora Power Users group. That's I know how that's how I got to know I got to know perhaps Brian through the group in a strange way. We're in the same group. Anton also, and then Sage. We kind of met independently of that group. And I guess ultimately, did I create a sock puppet account? No, I didn't. Had I used different IP addresses to post answers? Yes, I did, because I went away for military service and I kept answers in my draft inbox, and I asked my friend to post them on my behalf on a daily basis. So literally he'd log in and click post, 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 if that makes sense. And then beyond that, the truth is, and this is probably why people find it so mystifying and they think that there's something that I must have done that I'm not telling anybody, I don't really understand what happened other than I believe, or perhaps intuit, what Sage had perhaps said, is that I recognized ultimately that I was growing faster than, at least in my brief research, had ever grown on Quora, and I was due to perhaps let my rate of growth grow very quickly. And the problem with that is, unlike, for example, someone like Dushka, I forget her last name. She's
Dushka is Zapata.
Zapata.
There you go, perfect. Thank you.
Zapata. Yeah.
She just became a top writer.
So, unlike somebody like Dushka, she could have very easily done some of the small marketing things that I did do. I think the one thing that I did, ultimately, I think that Quora probably didn't like. The game of Quora is for the users as well as the writers. So the users would be Brian pre-writing Brian when he was like, I went on there to get information. That's what we all ultimately started on Quora for. Then at some point we started posting answers, and then we'd get an altogether different kind of, you know, dopamine hit. The amygdala starts firing, and you're like, oh my god, real people are responding to me. And then you kind of start writing furiously. I wrote because I wanted to write, but I also wrote with the intention to build an emailing list. I've got an emailing list of 21,000 people. I built that just from Quora in 4 months. 21,000 people. I can imagine that Quora did not like that, and I could probably, in hindsight, understand that that defeats perhaps the game of Quora in terms of a circular loop of keeping people and attracting users to the site. I went with some intention to, at the bottom of my answers, to take people to landing pages, and I know that multiple others were doing it, but they weren't perhaps having the same. Bless you.
Actually, we have a question from audience, technical question. If you allow to put a link to whatever you want.
Yeah. So I would put them at the bottom. I'd say, for more, follow me, basically, and then I link back to my actual profile, as well as writing an answer about fitness, and then I'd say, oh, hey, here's my guide to getting fit in 15 minutes per day. And then I'd create ebooks based upon areas that I was seeing the most success in, and I would begin including them at the bottom of my answers. I then did get some, not any blocks, but Quora began deleting any answers of mine that contained external links. So at that point, I then began using internal links. I then began using a lot more for more follow me on Quora, for more follow me on Quora, and they were other things I didn't get banned for, quote unquote, but I definitely do know that Quora didn't like me having too many external links, and whilst I was able to post an external link on every answer at the time at which I had 5,000 followers. I grew to 15 and a half. I don't know how many followers I have. I think I've got 22,000 followers actually. I think I had yeah. I think at the time, I think it was a very different ball game when I had 20,000 followers, because my growth curve obviously was going like that, and it wasn't the case that I was petering in. Perhaps unlike someone like Dushka, who's an amazing writer, as we all are, I also recognize that, hey, I enjoy writing. How can I get paid from writing on Quora? So I want to do it all the time. So that was one of the questions that I began to try and answer for myself. And I think that, as Sage mentioned, I ultimately think that Quora saw that and banned me. I signed up to LinkedIn Premium. I inboxed 11 members of their staff, 11 different members of their staff. I got 0 responses. I've got proof of that. I emailed my list. At that time it was around 15,000, 16,000 or something. I don't know. I had them send in 150 plus emails. I sent 10 plus independent emails myself to 3 to 4 different members of staff. I never got a response from anybody ever. So at that time I felt that a note had been sent around about my account in the office saying that this is the issue, because what I could never understand is why I never got a direct response from Quora. But that's
Deepak, that's my apologies. Like, the real thing is, all the patterns or all the system that you've been following to approach Quora, what you're doing, you're banded already. So this means you do not need to hold your nose this way, but you need to hold it the other way around. This means you should have done is created 5 videos on YouTube, make them a viral, I can guarantee you, where I would have called you on the very next hour, probably would have said, "Oh my God, you created such videos. Or second option, you should have written a post on LinkedIn."
So, sorry,
They would
Rizwan.
reply.
Some of it's breaking up, buddy.
Yeah.
But I get what he's saying, though. I really understand. He's saying that they'll come to you if you make a big enough, if a big enough explosion about it.
Yeah,
And he's
yeah.
right. He's right. They will.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, one video we're making right now. Everybody, so we're making a video, and it will be it's all on record, and it will be on our YouTube channel just after YouTube will render it. So one video is done. It's too long video. Obviously, nobody really watching 1 hour video. Video should be 5-7 minutes.
Well, that's his first point of advice. Keep it short. Remember, he said that at the beginning. So
Well,
I have a question. Actually, I have a technical question. When you turn them all to internal links to say, look at my profile here on Quora or follow me here on Quora, you have the metrics because I know you check a lot of metrics. Were you able to get the same amount of conversions when you couldn't say, here, go directly here, but sneak around the back and I'll meet you over here? Did you still get the same amount of conversions?
Ultimately, you do. It's the same instance when people say, don't leave third-party links on YouTube, because YouTube recognizes external links, but if you link internally to your own content, then their algorithm doesn't look at that so darkly. So link back to another video that you have. So just kind of realign the ratio. So instead of 80% external, 20% internal, flip it around and have 80% internal and 20% external. And then in line with that, initially I saw a drop, of course. Initially, I've not got as many outbound links. However, then my following started doing this. So that's when my following began to grow significantly from, Brian said it's 22,000. At that point, it started to grow. I was getting up to 1,000 new followers per day at one point. And that was around the period that I started to think, okay, I'm going to start linking internally. And the strangest thing was I was still getting into the Quora Digest every day. I had an edit ban. I was like, I'm in the Quora Digest. I'm in the Quora Digest. So that was like the weirdest thing. And as I asked around, I thought that this was normal, but people were like, dude, I've never got into the Quora Digest 30 days in a row. And so that was how it kind of worked for me. If that helps, Sage.
Okay, there is another technical question from audience, and it says, is there a way to filter unanswered questions first?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that means, is there a way for me to just look at questions that I should answer?
No, I think I don't know, but I think it's missing the point after this author of this question, because he thinks that it's much better to answer a question nobody answered yet. So you find a question, nobody answered it, and you answer this question. But yeah, okay, your opinion.
So I'll give some quick. No, Brian, did you want to say something?
No, there used to be a way to do that where there's no answers already, but that's not possible anymore due to changes with the topic page layout. You just kind of
I'm pretty sure it's possible with just Google and the site operator. I'm pretty sure it's very easy possible, but it's missing the point, I think.
Okay, no, I understand. Now I understand. So a few technical things that I did, I think, that helped me optimize my answering, because obviously research takes time, and then brain processing power takes time. You can't write 10 answers consecutively without seeing the bell curve happening, and your 7th to 10th answer being just crap, basically. So what I would do is I would look at someone like Brian, and I'd look at someone perhaps like Sage, and I'd subscribe to them. I wouldn't follow them because I don't want them to appear in my feed, because I don't want the noise of other answers. I just subscribe, so I'd get their notifications when they posted answers. So I would allow other writers to do some of my research in finding answers to answer for me. So I never did much research. I would just see, oh, Brian's answered 4 questions, Michael Kilcoyne's answered 3 questions, Dushka's answered 4 questions. and then I would set about answering a proportion of those answers, questions that I thought was interesting. That was one thing I'd do. The second thing I'd do is I'd front load all of my drafts. So I'd one day spend an hour and a half literally searching to find questions I was interested in answering, and just writing gibberish and then saving them as drafts, so then I could just come back to them, and that would allow me to, if I'm sitting waiting to do something, I might pop open my Chromebook, connect to Wi-Fi, and answer 3 questions whilst I was waiting for my friend to meet me for a coffee. That would allow me to find those pockets of time to answer questions on the fly. So they were 2 things I did after a little while, when it became too time-consuming, as well as too much of kind of, you know, brain power to really search for answers. I was like, I can just follow Brian. I'll let Brian do my research, and then I'll answer some of Brian's answers. And then, of course, there's other things which I ultimately never did. I began to see people doing it to me, which was tagging other followers in your answer. I began to get tagged by everybody. That's not something that I ever did, but I do know that some people do advise it. However, I don't think that that's a hugely effective strategy. I think that's more of a shot in the dark. The reason I say that is because ultimately I think Brian, I think that I question how much Brian would, you know, be happy to hear from someone who doesn't have an equivalent level of success. And the best ways to shortcut things, I think, ultimately, is to write the irreverent answers. Get into the Quora digest. If you get into the digest and you get 1 or 2 answers that start growing, you can use that, I think, as a kind of jumping board. The staggered approach with tagging Anton continually, it doesn't work as effectively. Go on, Brian. Do you want to say something, Brian? Because you might have had different success with it.
If you start tagging, you know, high-profile writers into your answers or comments continuously, unless it's like one of those, like, what are your favorite writer questions or whatever on Quora, they're going to start getting mad at you. And sooner or later, those notifications aren't going to be showing up in their notification feed anyway. So
absolutely. So that seemed a bit disingenuous, I think. That's what people think. The other thing I'd sometimes do is, you know, when there's lists where they say, give me your 16 different hacks, I would write my own hacks. But there's a lot of questions, before I answer, I literally do what I just call it the scroll. I look at a question, I scroll the first 5 to 7 answers, and I scan read what people have written, and I make sure that I excise, I cut out their answers from anything that I write. Because I'm like, if I'm just going to repeat what Brian's saying, there's no bloody point me answering. Why bother? That was something that I've begun to do. I see that a lot of people, I could tell from their answers, a lot of effort was spent, but they didn't just quickly have a look at what other people had written. And I found that to be very effective. It was like, right, everyone's using some simple facts. Why don't I use a weird analogy? You know, like dating is a little bit like talking to a kangaroo. When everyone's talking about dating being like, you know, going out with cucumbers, it's like, well, people are talking about vegetables, let's talk about mammals. Let's just find a different way to make it relate. And that was commonly a comment on my answer, saying, you've got this really weird way of looking at things. And some of it was obviously just how I think about things, but some of it was also being just having the 5-second scroll and realizing that, well, Brian's really wrote an amazing answer in this format. Let me go with a different approach. And sometimes that'd crash and bomb. Sometimes I get no views. Another time I'd get, my biggest answer was 1.4 million. I don't know. I got banned for that answer at the point I got 1 million views on an answer within 6 weeks. And it was just growing like ridiculously. And that was a poem that I'd written, kind of, about why is family all that important. Everyone was written, yeah, you know, I have this relationship with my father and what you need to understand about your friendships. And I wrote a poem that was about 90-second read. And it got 1 million views. So I always...
Yeah, but that's exactly the key. You know, what you're doing and what you touched on earlier, with today we've got Blab and we've got, you know, Periscope and we've got people are looking exactly for that personal connection. You look at what Dushka does better than anybody that I've ever, even you, no offense, but
No, dude.
she's got an emotional connection in almost everything. Somebody can ask her what's it like to do anything, and she's like, well, in my own personal family, we are brought to tears because of this. And you're like, wow, that's very impactful. And that's what they like. When they see in Periscope, for example, you have to be more real, more unrehearsed, less polished. You know, like I said earlier, I'm actually the host of a television show and things like that, and that's a very different environment than what people want to see online. And that's what we teach people. And that's why your poem took off so well. It's just from you. It's just a personal touch. You know what I mean? It's really key in today's environment.
No, absolutely. I think that Dushka does that amazingly. All hats off to her.
Deepak,
Go on.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you in between. My apologies, because in next 5 minutes I have to go for the prayers. So I just got two small questions. First,
Go ahead.
Not the
dude.
questions. Basically, they're just the comments. First, from you, what I have learned personally, that how to avoid things on Quora rather than learning things a lot.
Yeah.
I need to be like, before I step into that stone, either it's going to float or it's going to throw me down. So I need to be careful. The second thought that I have right now, if you personally ask me, with all these things, I'm thinking to deactivate my Quora profile, because if I work that hard and if I get a lot of people attached to me, and at the end of the day, Quora comes up and says, oh my God, you are getting famous, you're gone. So I think it was much better for me, the website that I have, which is like abnormalthinker.com, would have been more famous, rather than I go for Quora and beg them, please let other people come up and talk to me.
Yeah, but
So,
Quora is already.
I'm going to just.
I would say that.
No, my apologies again. I tell you something. If you come up.
I can't. It's breaking up. Sorry, Rizwan.
Okay. What I'm saying that what people are looking forward in this era nowadays is that people need to come up and talk the truth. Okay, though it's bitter, though it's emotional, though it's harsh. The people who are running the systems as Quora, as Yahoo Answers, or other forums, they would never like to do that. They would never like you to be a genius person on the top of them, and all the things move from them to you.
Yeah.
So what personally I've learned, because I'm going to leave now. Like I got 2 minutes to my prayers. My apologies. I'm unable to attend this again. I mean the whole session, but I think I should deactivate my now. If you personally ask me.
Okay, very briefly then, to respond in a way that will be useful, consider Quora to be the adrenaline shots to your pumping heart. Your heart is your blog. It's your long-term thing. Quora is ultimately where the conversation is. You don't need SEO. You don't need meta tags. You need to write good content. For that reason, it is a worthwhile investment of time. Yes, you can get banned. The learning is never place your eggs in one basket. Where I was writing 10 answers, write 5 answers, and also start a podcast on iTunes, which is what I've done. The other thing beyond that is, let me remind, and it's for you more than it is for me. What was the key to my perhaps success was that I wrote from a place of personal experience, as you said. And as a consequence of that, I was able to grow a 20,000 email list without spending $1 in marketing. I can't get that same level of investment in 4 months on my own website because, and this is the people that forget that, without getting that dopamine hit of all those comments and all that feedback. And that's actually what kept me going. If I didn't get 1,000 views, for one answer and then 50,000 views for the next one, I'd just give up. And if I look at historically, anything I've done, I write as good content on LinkedIn. Sorry, go on.
My last comment again, my apologies. I'm a LinkedIn lover, right? I love LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you give the same time and same passion on LinkedIn, you would not get banned. Okay, you're going to get more viewers, more professional viewers. Secondly, and if you do the same thing on Reddit and Hub pages, you're gonna get more better results as compared to Quora.
Okay.
I can guarantee you that. I'm gonna have a conversation. Right. Take care. Cheers. Thank you.
See you, dude. See you, man.
Yeah, I extremely doubt that it would be possible to do in LinkedIn to replicate this what you've done there, because I think what's good, my personal experience in Quora, there are two types of people who read in an answer and people who write in an answer. And basically, people who write in an answer, they don't really read. You come to Quora to write answer, not to find the information. And Quora is a good established train for questions. So if, for example, I wrote about it, but nobody particularly interested. So what you can for your blog, instead of just referring to your blog all the time, what you can do, you can open a Q&A on your blog. But obviously nobody knows your blog, so you don't have questions because nobody knows you. You are brilliant. You're absolutely brilliant. Your blog is fantastic, but nobody knows it. So you open Q&A, nothing has happened, or you have no questions, obviously, because nobody knows you. Even you, brilliant. So what you do, you just copy questions from Quora, put it on your blog, and answer it, and then take answer, put back into Quora, and mention that you get it from this Q&A. So obviously, if you're brilliant, if your answers are good, people would read it, and some of them will go to this Q&A. And one day you will get first question straight to Q&A, not your copy from Quora, because obviously Quora is it's a social network. It's not really question and answer. Whatever, because if I want information, quick information, correct information, Quora is not the way to find it, because as I said, so if you ask particular questions, first, it's no guarantee that the answer will be within, I don't know, within 1 day, no guarantee. Second, some stupid idiot will write and say that, in Australia there are 100 million people, for example, and 2 kangaroos. And you're not sure if it's so. But if you do it continuously with your Q&A, and you answer it quite quick, and your answers are relevant and correct, so this is a way to bring up your blog. Well, this is my idea of using it for.
I think it's a good idea of using the kind of Quora train, because.
Okay, guys, we've been for about 1 hour, so go ahead if you have more questions. I'll check our website if we have more comments and questions. Guys, Brian, Stage, we have another guest who wasn't particular talking, Ankit. Yeah, well, I don't know. Okay, question. Oh, he's gone. Yeah.
I talk with him. He's on my Facebook. He found me through Quora. I recognize the name. Don't worry. It's continue. I just
No. You go ahead because we don't have really much time left. So if you have any questions, shoot now. Do you, Brian? Stage? Do you have any questions or any comments?
For anyone watching that when Rizwan talked and just left right now, I would say don't give up on Quora. Go back there because it is a place that is valuable to use. It is the adrenaline shot, and just take a counterpoint to that, and that is if you use the 80-20 that we talked about, where you're putting stuff in your own personal, you're not going to get banned. And I would say, Deepak, the only thing I would say differently to what you said. I don't think they need to slow down to 5. Do your 10, but keep your links internal. One of the things that you've done really well is you run up the side of the mountain instead of slowly rock climb up the side of the mountain. And I think that's been huge. I think you will put a lot of content out in a short time, and I think that has a huge impact, and you're immediately prolific. And I think that really gives you credibility, which builds your following. And so I would say do the 10 just like you were going to. Do every day. Do the ones you don't have to research. Do exactly like you did. Just keep the links internal. And if you're not seeing any drop in your conversions from your from your internal profile page, there's no need to slow down. I would do it exactly the way you did it, just with sending them to the back page. It's super smart.
No, absolutely, and I think people can learn from my fall as to that change. I saw someone was asking, and thank you for that, by the way, Sage. I think that I sometimes preach moderation, perhaps but it's not something I abide by. You know, I do think go all out and find ways to do the same thing faster. And I don't mean dip the standard. I mean do the same quality of answers faster, and that's sometimes the implication that people consider comes with speed. Lower Deepak, your 7th to 10th answer is going to be rubbish. No, I don't think that they are. I just think that I have still the 80-20 because it's a rule, but I wouldn't like to think that I write bad answers, and I never preach to anybody in your bid to push out content, drop the standard. Just find ways to write that content faster, and there's 10 ways to skin a cat or whatever. Find your most effective way. What works for me doesn't work for you. You look at Arnold Schwarzenegger interviews about the keys to success. We'll never talk about a pair of training gloves he got from Gold's Gym. A lot of it is about mindset in combination with finding lots of tricks that work for you, but it does begin with mindset. And finally, I noticed someone asked, do I have a blog link? Deepak Shukla. DeepakShukla.com. I have a Facebook like page as well. It's my name. Where do I now push out content prolifically? I have a podcast. It's called Life, Love, and Entrepreneurship. It doesn't obviously have the Q&A feature of Quora by any means, but that is currently what I'm doing. DeepakShukla.com. Also Google my name and have a podcast, and you can find me, Life, Love, and Entrepreneurship. So just
I will publish all the links. And no problem. But yeah, if somebody didn't get it. Okay, guys, we've been more than 1 hour. If no more questions. Okay, now we do have another question from public. I'll just paste it to you. Okay, so I have another one.
What is Quora From feature? Okay, Brian. Oh, you should take this one, buddy, because I've been talking too much.
Brian, do you want to answer the question? What is Quora blog feature?
Brian, can you hear us, buddy?
Yeah. The blog. So I have a couple blogs on Quora. I don't use them too actively, but they're basically things where you can just talk about whatever you want to. They're side to the answers. The answers are very specific. They have a specific format you kind of have to follow. And so the blogs allow you to kind of talk about different interests that you may have that don't have questions you can answer, or talking about what you're experiencing. There's a number of different blogs run by different users that work with the topic ontology, so figuring out how topics go into different things, and we work actively with Quora employees to make sure that fits into the product. I do that a lot. We have different merging questions and just talking about different questions that are on there. But blogs allow you to definitely do things you couldn't do in answers on Quora, and it's a great extension of it. But they're probably not the most profitable thing on there because they get very little views, and it's very hard to get people to follow your blogs. So if you can actively start writing answers and get people trafficking your blogs, it's a very fun thing to do, but it's not the best area to go unless you're a very active writer like Dan Holliday or Robert Frost.
Okay, guys, before we go, okay, Sage, you were not able to tell us about your books. I asked and we couldn't hear your answer. Could you just a couple of minutes, yeah?
Yeah, as long as there we go. Yeah, I have I've got quite a big practice, actually. I'm happy with the most famous book I have right now is called How to Become a Superhero. It's actually a self-help book.
Superhero, this one?
How to Become a Superhero.
Yeah, but yeah. If I read it, can I fly after that?
No.
No, only from 15th floor. Yeah, okay, down there.
No, it's about being the best person you can be. Some members of the Secret Service, I'm happy to say, have read it and enjoyed it. And in the U.S. Secret Service, I've had some CEOs and big business people read it successfully and do great things with it, so I'm pretty excited. It got me the television show that I talked about as well, and you know, so things are going pretty well with that book. That's probably my most famous. I have other books, but that's my favorite at the moment.
Okay, so you and Deepak, well, didn't happen that time, so maybe Deepak will change his mind and do something about it, or maybe. So okay, we have Brian.
You can't tie him down. That's what the world needs to know. You can't tie Deepak down. You can try, but it's not going to work.
Well, yeah, it worked here.
Yeah, for 1 hour, that's it. We need him for longer term. You have him for an hour, and he's ready to get out of his seat already.
There is a first step for everything. So you get him for 1 hour. He likes the format because I understand, Deepak, it's not typical format for you because basically I tell you the truth. 2 hours before the webinar, he was asking me is it audio or video. So he wasn't really sure what he was doing. It's a first time for him. So try. Maybe he loves it. It's like a Quora adrenaline shot. So maybe he loves it, and that's it. He stays with you for 100 or 200 hours. Okay, guys. Deepak, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was very, very, very interesting, and we'll be keep watching your podcast, your interviews, and everything. Okay, Deepak Shukla used to be champion of Quora, been banned for Quora for being too good. Don't be too good. Okay, the youngest champion of Quora, Brian Blood, used to be the youngest. Now somebody beat him by 1 year or something, but he still is 14, and he's a most writer, or ridiculous or not, I don't know. It's great achievement, completely different achievement. I'm pretty sure when he will be 29, he will be much bigger than Deepak, unless he will be banned. And
actually, my wife didn't think he was real. She was pretty sure, Brian, she was pretty sure that you were a fake profile put out by some adult or something. She's like, no, with school, with high school, and whatever, that he's not going to have time.
I get that a
fake
ton.
Profile.
Yeah, oh, he's real. I see he's real. I can see
real.
Him, but yeah, she was
he
sure
can talk. Yeah. Okay.
High school and everything that he would never have time to become as big a writer as he has. And I said, no, he's the real deal. He's legit.
Yeah, it's difficult. My most popular answers are always the ones about how I'm able to manage Quora and school at the same time. Because people just don't understand
prove it.
How it's impossible.
We made a history. We proved it's a real person. It's not artificial intelligence or not a bunch of writers who are doing it. Okay, guys, thank you very much for being with us. We have plenty of stuff, but we are mostly digital marketing. But you're always welcome to be a guest or speaker, or just watch us. We'll have plenty of stuff tomorrow. Tomorrow we have another great webinar, which is SEO webinar, and it's gonna be about outdated SEO tactics. Yeah, well, you're all welcome, and everybody who's watching us, all welcome. So thank you very much. And now I'm doing I'm stop broadcasting.